Butterflies. You're coming from the gut. That's what I heard in the imaging. You're not thinking, you're working from your gut right now. That's a very good place to work from, by the way. You want those butterflies in your gut. It's letting you know something's going on down there.
So
That's where you're thinking.
So how would we practice this at home if we don't have cards? Do we make them?
Yeah, make some cards. I've got a whole chapter on how to make the cards and score yourself and blah, 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 blah.
Which book?
Huh?
In which book?
The ESP book, yeah, that's right, that's the ESP book. And it's got all these different chapters so that you can start methodically making your own guided images, not use many, but use your own voice. Now I'm going to go down to this place, now I'm going to come back up here, now I'm going to go back down here, now I'm going to come up here. And then at the end of the book, I give you all the different places so you can start exploring what the differences are. And this one right here is that one, you see. That's the part, but if you can do the other ones, well, wait till I show you what you can do with those things. And the ability to play your mind like you would a musical instrument.
I didn't do the meditation.
You know, I want to hear that flute.
And
I want to hear what you have to say. That's the beauty.
But I have different symbols. I'd love to see what you could do.
Well, you've got some serious inner dialogue. You know, you don't believe it. Serious inner dialogue issues. You're journaling. Clear that immediately. Yeah. I recall that. Good, good.
We need a buckyball.
A buckyball here. Oh, yeah. You don't want to talk about it.
Well, there's something there.
I have the way to do that. We'll start with the vibrator and then that vibrator. That place is really good. I watch how active your mind is. Yeah. Being a precog is a thing you can train yourself to do also, by the way. You can train yourself to do all of this. Some of us go to those certain kinds of places, like a duck to water, easier than others. And that's, again, because of your values and belief system. And once I teach you how to do some of that, now you watch out what you can do and where you can go. Yes, ma'am.
I realized I scored significantly the first time when I was focusing only on color.
Only on colors?
Only. The second I focused only on symbol and went way, way down.
On the opposite end, because you didn't like that. You wanted to do colors.
I like color.
Are you a spoiled brat? No. All right. You should talk with her back there that did the colors too. I'll bet the two of you have something to say to each other. The immediate grin. And you know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Kind of touched on a lot of things over the course of the weekend. The workshop is billed as an urban survival skills course.
This would be the skill that you would use, for example, is that you're not in a safe place, you're in the middle of zombie land. You're in East LA visiting your pop or whatever, and all of a sudden the coast is gone, and the Seattle's gone, San Francisco's gone, where do I go?
Right.
Where do you go?
Well, my question is, you've got quite a few books, so what my question is, as a soldier, I'm interested in survival. You were kind of billed as teaching survival skills to SEALs, so which book
ESP book.
is most geared towards the
That,
survival?
that one is
Okay.
the ESP book.
Okay.
But I'm more than survival. I'm trying to move it to another level, and so the Modern Alchemist gives you those steps for personal transformation of yourself. But as a soldier, you start with this technique of ESP, and it'll pull you out of a bunch of scrapes. Trust me when I tell you that. I should have been dead a dozen times, and it saved my bacon. I'm not kidding. I lucked out, you know. I lucked out, you know. But it was because I was using these things. And my SEALs, the ones I trained, are like a religion to them. Because the system works. There's absolutely no question. And so if you're in the middle and you don't know what to do, don't think. You don't want to act like a lemming. What you want to do is be able to grab it and make that decision and know that you're right. To know, to dare, to, you know, that Alice to know, to dare, to go. That's what it's about. Making,
Command decision.
yeah, there you command decisions, and you don't have enough data to make an intelligent one.
Well, what about your OODA loops? I mean, you're like observe, orient, decide, act, and that's constantly going, right? So I mean, that's part of this command decision making. I can work in ESP with it then too, to sort of.
Yeah, and we don't, Nick and Matt didn't want to call it ESP.
Sure.
Because it really, in fact, is not an extra sense. What it really is more information that you have that you don't have access to in your conscious state, and how do you get access to the whole of you for survival when you're down and dirty. And this will save your life one day. Probably, in fact, it means that literally, and I just said that to you because it'll probably someday, and you'll remember this moment, when you pulled it out of the hat, the rabbit, whoops, wrong mammal. And it will probably save your life. And it isn't about saving your life. You saved your own life, of course, but that's because you have more union with yourself. That's what it's about. And the man, the woman, who has that, never knew that realization of self, that's the superior man. Is that done like that? The superior man, that is confusion, sorry. Yes,
So
ma'am.
is this kind of simple as, the more you do the protocol
The
and
better
identify,
it comes faster because you have no question then, you
just know.
just know.
Got
And know that you know because you tested yourself and had confirmation and feedback, and then at the end of the day, you look at how many wounds you got to all the people around you. That's another way, statistically, you pull this rabbit out of that.
So I noticed that, like I scored 4 and 4, but I've noticed that I was really answering the next,
We're here. So you're a precog.
I guess.
Well, you know what a precognition is. Yeah.
What if you had lag? That is if you were answering before, what if you were answering after?
Precognition and precog. Pre and retrog are both paranormal. I had a retrognition experience once. I'm going to tell you about it. This has happened to me when I was 10 years old. My dad, I was 10 years old. I was just falling asleep in my bed. And all of a sudden I saw a boat sinking. And I saw 2 individuals in the sea swim and go to an island. And actually, basically how I saw it, I was seeing it through a seagull. And I told my dad what happened. And my dad called Sandpoint Air Base, in Seattle. And they had a ship that had sank. And they found the 2 sailors that were saved off that that they didn't know to otherwise look. This was up in the Aleutians. And I asked my father, I said, how can I be doing that at 10 years old? I had no knowledge of anything like that. I was 10. I wasn't tuned into my mother and grandmother. I didn't, blah, blah, blah. It just happened. I had a vision. Told my dad that. My dad acted on it, and they found the sailors. And that was a redraw because when I saw it, it was after the fact. I saw it happening, and I was able to save the sailors because I saw something that happened previous and where they were. That's retrognition as opposed to precog, where Carrie or one of the others might do, where they're seeing in the future. And both are tools. I saved a sailor's lives at age 10. I had no clue of it. My dad, you know how he explained it to me? He said, you're like a radio. And, you're an antenna, and sometimes you tune in to certain kinds of radio broadcasts. Think of it as a radio. That's how my dad explained it to me. That was back in 1954 when it happened. I was 10 years old, and they found the two sailors. And one of the sailors came over and thanked my father for being the one to alert them, because they had done this thing. They saw the ship that had sunk. There were no survivors, and they were going on the island that they swam to. It was almost, I think it was like 7 or 8 miles away, something like, long distance. But the two sailors were alive on that island. They found them the day after.
So if you've seen it after, though, how does that, what's the practical application of that tool? You're not getting it until after the fact.
I say those sailors' lives was one practical application. What I'm trying to do now is have it so it's a regular, everyday occurrence, and it's integrated into my everyday life as an assumed truth. Because once you do that, you have just moved up in more consciousness. And there's more places to go after that. Good luck to you. Cool. I mean, really, like shooting. You're following the bird. You're not shooting the bird. You're leading the bird. Okay. When you're leading the bird, you have a sense of where you want to lead it, right? Especially when you're going boom, boom. Where you're doing cross, going on. And if you can work from the essential place where the way you lead is not thought. He's moving this fast, I've got a number 7 shot, and I've got to lead it by 6, where you're working instinct, that's how all snipers, the best ones work. Where they pull the trigger. Exactly correct. So what do is you're aware of the variables, you let them all percolate down to your gut, and then you go. And that's going to be the place that saves your life. Not the formulas. That's the part. Good luck on training yourself. Any other questions?
What?
I thought you had, yes. Good.
Earlier, when you had the slides up with the
Holosync, hemisync, these are brain drivers.
Basically
Yeah,
the same thing.
yeah. They're different copyrights.
Doctor, when you were taking us through the meditation, I've seen the bluish purple right here in the center of my forehead for a long time when you were bringing me up through the clouds and with the blue.
We're seeing blue and
Purple. What is that signal?
I have no idea. Write that in your journal and see what comes to you. Because that blue might mean something, but not to me. But it's going to mean something to you, especially when you stew on it, and then have a dream or something and make another dream. Wait a minute, didn't I go back in your diary? And something's going to happen where all of a sudden you're talking to yourself again. You used to do that when you were a kid. You forgot all about that.
I still do.
Cool. But you understand what I'm saying. What you're trying to do is form some kind of a dialogue or language that you can talk to yourself with. And the instincts are real. Yes, sir.
How about visualization? I struggle with that sometimes. Is there a sequence? You start out someplace, you get to the point where it's real out here. What do you do?
Yeah, that's a good question. The problem with visualization is that everybody's a little different in the way they want to do it. and predicated on what age you are. At age 4, it's called eidetic, as opposed to age 7, when it's coming in at a different level. What you need to do is start talking to yourself again on what you think it means. Doesn't mean it's right. Just start talking to yourself about what that imaging means. What is it? What do you think it means? Write it down. What do I think this means? Ah, right, that's your question. And then let that thing come to you, and then watch how that one works. When you don't know what that blue little image in your mind's eye are, that sounds to me like a good ESP question to work on next week. You know, start there. That's obviously something in you wants you to start there because that's what happened. That is, okay, well, start there. With that question. You, same thing. Start there. See where it takes you. I don't know where it's going to take you. The book has a lot of different information on neurolinguistics and other possibilities of the way your brain works. And what you're trying to do is figure out how to talk to yourself using this bottleneck or whatever it is. Good luck on that. Well, keep me informed. Let me know where it goes. I find it kind of interesting.
Could you give us a few words on what you mean by honest journaling and how much is that?
Honest journaling is where you actually are communicating the feelings that you had about it, not what happened in the dream. The dream itself is irrelevant, mostly. We have discovered that you're dreaming of a flying elephant with a pink nose going through Dumbo Land. Isn't the message? How did you feel about that pink elephant? That's where everything lies in your dream states, is the emotional content. And most people cannot articulate how they feel about something exactly. They have some feelings about it. The heart is very simple. When you talk about the heart, it has 3 basic feelings. Yes, no, wow. No, that's the truth of it. It's very simple. Yes, no. That is the heart. And what you want to do now is be able to take my words like that, simplicity, honestly trying to put down how you felt about it. Progop has, with his Zenite Dream Manual, talks a lot about how to articulate yourself when you're journaling, and that's what they mean about honest journaling. It's not about what happened in the dream, like I was fighting this person. How did you feel about fighting this person? Do you feel good about it or bad about it? That's where your content's like. It's not about the fight. It's not even about that. It probably isn't even conflict. Something that the person might be yourself that you're at war with. You just use a metaphor. The dreams do not use symbolism. They use emotions. And that's buckets of studies. It's not about symbolism, and so these big dream books, you open it up and, elephant means blah, blah, blah. That's not what a dream is about. Yes, ma'am?
Would you mind talking about what you think is coming down the pipe?
You mean what I think is going to happen?
Yeah, it's a bumper thing.
Well, I can tell you that right now, today, this day, we're experiencing a global event in the drought and weather change. This is the worst drought in history by 800 years. And you're right now witnessing it. So what do you think is going to happen right now? Well, I can tell you that because of the corn failures, there's going to be a whole bunch of people in Asia that are going to die in 2013. And I mean a lot of people. There is going to be a suffering of which you have never heard of on this planet, even throughout history. It's going to be one of the worst hungers ever. So that's Exhibit A. You mean is the coronal mass ejection, or the aliens going to come in like, day after tomorrow? What's going to happen? I don't know. I am witnessing a drought, the likes of which is historical. What does that mean? Well, weather is changing across the globe. There were 7 markers in weather in Europe, and now there's only 4, and now it's coming down to 2.
Is that due to the chemtrails, you think, or is it a combination of, all of the...
Okay, well, my correct response on that would be yes, all of the above. Well, Joseph Campbell said it best when he said, when you see the kingdom of the Father on earth, the apocalypse has already occurred. It is perpetual in its potential. And right now, we're a couple of seconds to midnight. And the one I'm worried about, the one I worry about most, of not global change, the one I worry about is plutonium and reactor 4 at Fukushima. And I noticed that nobody is talking about that.
Right, yeah.
Well, why is that?
Well, they don't want
Because it's
to panic
real.
tobacco.
They don't want to what?
Panic us.
What do you mean panic us? You mean while we die? I'll tell you something I do know. When Fukushima burped, there was this massive, I got a picture on my website, of massive radioactive cloud going right straight for North America.
Right.
And what happened is, luckily, most of it shifted just before it hit Hawaii, and a small portion of it hit San Francisco, and the rest of it, the majority, went up into Alaska, into places where it won't matter. Well, it matters, but it went up to Alaska where there was no kill. But the part that went in San Francisco, today, not yesterday, today, the cesium-137 levels in milk are 100% above EPA standards. It's jumped 4 times in the last, since Fukushima, and USD, FDA, is coming out saying that those numbers are arbitrary and not to worry. However, I'll tell you what I do know. Anyone that was born from 1950 to 1970, who? How many people? 1950 to 1970? You go to your pharmacy and you talk to your pharmacist about thyroid cancer and thyroid problems, and 1 in 4 of you is going to have a thyroid problem because of what they did in Utah in 1953. It got in the milk. And anyone that was a little older, like me, didn't affect my thyroid as much. But one of my girlfriends had thyroid cancer, and when they removed her thyroid to save her life, it split our relationship because her personality changed. That's what thyroids are about. There's all kinds of things going on with these glands. And I don't have answers on what's going to happen. I do know that there's radioactivity everywhere. Yes, sir?
Should we be taking potassium, iodine, thorazine?
It's too late for that, and if you have a choice in drinking milk, I'd stay with a cow than over a goat. A goat will have twice the radiation. Why? Has a broader range of what it'll eat. And will you see where these one single particle comes down and what it does to a dandelion root?
What about like almond or soy milk?
What's that?
What about almond or soy milk?
Yeah.
Soy milk and CMO. You know what?
Imagine what's going to happen with our new babies and what they're going to look like. With their third eye open. But it isn't a third eye, it's something else. Well, that's not funny. It's kind of scary. I don't have all the answers. I have some concerns. I don't mean to alarm you. Yes, there's plenty of things you can do to try to armor yourself and protect yourself, and if you're sick, how to heal yourself. But really, 50% of everything happens in the mind first, before it happens anywhere else. So you start there. And then you can do your diet, do your remediation, those kinds of things. Yes, ma'am.
Can you talk about some of the fringe experiences you had?
The which ones?
Like Fringe, X-Files, those kinds of experiences. What was the most memorable?
You need to.
I need more votes.
Oh, okay. What do you mean? What do you want to know?
Well, like,
Now there's going to be some people here
How about the
that
truth?
don't want me to do that. They'd like me to stay on the ESP. So it's okay. I just, heads up. No matter what I do, I'm not going to please everybody by
okay,
being
well,
funny.
okay, like alternate universes
I
or
want you to do
timelines.
Yeah, I know you do, but, so what?
Timelines, alternate worlds, that kind of thing? Stories.
Aliens.
Let's put it this
Because
way.
if the shit's hitting a
Merlin.
fan, we can change the timeline
Yeah.
or the world. Or
Merlin said it. I used this quote in one of my first books because Merlin was very cool. In that quote, by the way, on the back cover it had drugs, sex, and magic. And under drugs, I said reality is for those people that can't handle drugs, so you can imagine. Right? Okay, now, on the front, it said, Merlin, this is a direct quote from T.H. White. Anything not specifically forbidden is mandatory. Which means if it's in your mind's eye as a possibility, you can count on it being real. Because you're only in 4th grade, and of course it's happening, and more. Is an alien good or bad? Yes. And agendas? Yes. And can you comprehend what's going on? No. Because how do you comprehend, by definition, God? By definition, God is not knowable. And so if an alien is out here like Lloyd Pye might infer, which by the way, I don't believe in creationism, and I certainly do not believe in Darwinism, evolution. I think we were manufactured. I have some arguments for that.
Well, the Anunnaki.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you know,
Nephilim in the Bible in Genesis, no?
yeah, and the Titans, and you know, there's all kinds of mythology. Are aliens real? How could they not be? I mean, how could they not be? Now, what is an alien? Well, let's talk about Michael Risia and the soil as a quantum computation algorithm that's conscious. We'll call that Gaia.
Yeah.
You know, how about the dolphin who's lower on the food chain than Orca? Orca has a cerebral cortex that's twice the size of man, and it's firing 60% of it. If you want to know who God is, it's Orca. But that's probably not our God. It was made by something. It's a water planet. You're a byproduct, from my point of view. I have no illusions, like Carly Simon would suggest, that this song is not about me. I'm not kidding. You know, we are so caught up in our own belief system that how could the world not be flat? And do you realize that as of today, most Republicans, I'm not going there, would have you believe that using an iPod is good, but they want to treat creationism. How does that work? The discrepancy. Bill Nye, someone I respect, said, you know, that this is devolving, man. It's not going to create jobs with this thing. Why would you want to promote this thing and at the same time use an iPod? How does that work?
Now he's dead.
Who? No, he's not. That's another myth that went on the internet. Bill Nye is not dead. No, they tried to kill him off for him saying what he did.
He said that and he died.
No.
What do you think of Courtney Brown, the remote viewing that went on for 2013 and the floods?
Yeah, well, there's no question that we've got a major problem happening in the melting of ice right now.
It's not melting. For God's sake, that's nonsense.
Well, it's freezing and melting. It depends on where it's at.
Well, yeah, isn't that right? Except, guess what? Indonesia just moved one of their cities inland because of the flooding they're expecting to happen. And I'm going to say that in your lifetime, Japan will no longer exist as a continent.
I don't believe that for an instant. Think about this for a second. The Earth is a bowl of water. If you a bunch of ice cubes in this bowl of water, and the ice cubes melt, what happens to that bowl of water? Is they will higher or lower? It will go lower, not higher.
Unless, of course, we have a coronal mass ejection that melts the water and takes it into water vapor, and now you have a gas planet like Venus. And then you can go to a second scenario. I mean, I can go all over the place with that. We don't really know. And Gore farming, we can let third world countries do our farming for us, and we should focus more on the high-tech physics jobs. And you know what I said back to him?
What?
What planet were you born on? That's the reason I didn't work for Gore. Because Tony Van Zandt is my friend. I'm a real scientist running with real crowd and with real people. And Van Zandt was on his cabinet and wanted me on too because of my dream to make food part of your divine right, like water. They're going to try to privatize water. What I think is we should go in the opposite direction. Instead of privatizing water, we should also make food free.
Right.
And when you do that, that 13-year-old that went to the United Nations, and she said to the United Nations, when you were my age, you didn't have to worry about the food you ate. You didn't have to worry about the air you breathed or the water you drank. What have you done to us?
Right.
What have we done to our children? And I'm going to say that the people that are going to pull us out of this are either 6 years old or younger. They're the ones that are going to make it's not us. And our education system is in shambles, and anybody that's in the education system is already lost. And kids, the young ones, have already been programmed for the golden arches. And sugar is the drug of choice. Now, where are we going to go with all of that? It'll be the children that help us save this world. And Mars is our get-out-of-jail card with plutonium. Because if the plutonium gets loose, and you're a bacterium 2 miles down in a lava tube, you won't survive. And that's that. In other words, it is a planetary killer. And as far as I'm concerned, why are they not asking, even Ralph Nader was not asked that question. You know, all 18 candidates, it's not about the Republicans and Democrats. That's it. It's all of them that are running.
Absolutely.
Not one of them is talking about it. Why? Okay, that's your responsibility. You need to, the presidential debates are going on right now. All of you need to start issuing that challenge of why are they not even talking about the real important things on Earth. I'm a physicist, there's no question. Plutonium is crazy. And Matt wrote 400 Chernobyls. What does that bring to mind? And if you look at the Madrid fault, there are 32 reactors. How does that work? What is going on? Why would they even think like that? You know, I was up in Nova last year. I'm a farmer, and I'm still used as an agricultural consultant for Canada. And they took me into Nova Scotia, and I was up in the northern part, and I was watching on a day-to-day basis. I watched the tide change in Nova Scotia go 60 feet. That 60-foot change every 12 hours is enough to power the entire East Coast, all on its own, with no grid, just using tide. We have some buoys like that out in Oregon right now. They're doing, where the buoys move and it generates the power. That's how it works. Seasonal change. And now we have weather changes that are changing everything, and it's going to mess up agriculture. And the corn crops, I don't think we're going to recover from the corn line. And that's okay, because I don't think we should have corn in our diet.
Exactly.
So, there it is. More questions?
Well, they're trying, my parents live in Iowa on a farm.
I'm glad for your passion. Keep that passion. That is essential for making this happen, and your grandchildren making this happen for us. Because it's going to be them, not your daughter, that will make these changes. It'll be your grandchildren that will do it. And it's going to come from your passion of, what have I done? And they're going to see that and get it. And unfortunately, I believe it's going to be the ones that are today, 6 years or younger. Yes.
So, I heard you're trying to come up with drought-resistant corn now. I just talked about...
Sort of like a camel. I'd walk a mile for one.
Everything starts on the inside.
What's that?
Everything actually actually starts on the inside. So what we see is what we perceive actually starts in here. If you got control of all the people on the planet, you got to perceive what you wanted them to perceive, then you're back actually manifesting.
How am I gonna make you think what I want you to
With
do?
TV
How is that
and
gonna
things
work?
like that, but the more people on the planet, it would be more and more difficult to control. So at some point in time, if you want to maintain control of your status quo of life, then you would have to get rid of a phenomenal amount of people.
Well, they're gonna do that next year.
Yeah.
Watch and see.
So-
In fact, the prime directive, not in Star Trek, but in the prime directive today, is that there are too many people in this world. And that before any technology is advanced, before any of your civil rights are returned to you, 50% of the world has to die. Now that, I even can conceive of that, as a reality. On the other end, who makes those decisions?
Exactly.
That's this elite. And that's why I'm going to say, I believe, I can't prove it, but my belief is we had a close encounter in the 1850s. And there were another society that now has space travel that we don't.
Yeah.
So we don't have a population issue, right? If we got space travel,
That's right.
there's a lot of places to go, man.
Yeah, but the breakaway civilization controls the attack, and they're not gonna release it, so you're not gonna get to go back.
It's not about you, it's going to be about your granddaughter.
Yeah.
And that's where it's going to happen.
If we make it.
What do you mean if we make it? The man is like a cockroach. There will be survivors. Because I know something I can't say, but there are all kinds of arcs. And one of them's on Mars right now, just because of that. That we were never interested in the moon. I saw top secret, I'll get you. I saw top secret documents in 1970 when I worked military that stated right there it was, 1 year before the moon, a joint manned expedition to Mars. I have no idea what happened to it. It was about me, it was about my paper and the Mariner thing. There, 1967, they detonated a nuclear warhead on the south pole of Mars, and it didn't work. They were trying to terraform it. In 1968, it was a joint manned expedition, 1 year before the moon. Now, let me say something about that. Who's our partner in that joint manned expedition? I saw it because I was a reader. Yeah, Russia. Now, how does that work? They're in a Cold War. Yeah. They were trying to put oxygen on it so you could be above ground rather than below ground.
But why would nuclear radiation?
No. They were blowing up ice.
Oh, okay.
They were trying to terraform it. It didn't work. But there's some things going on that I'm not privy to because I'm, an old grumpy man with weird hair on my nose now. But, I'm able to do inferences from what I know. There's no question. I think there are two races of humans right now, and one of them has space travel and one of us do not. And there's something else going on. When I was in Antarctica, what I saw in Antarctica, I was not the lead on that project. They brought me in, and what I saw was an underground cave that was a mile high with clouds and weather. Did you know that exists on Earth?
Yeah, Admiral Byrd said it.
Well, it's a fact, and guess what else? Because I'm managing bunkers, I'm now being privy to all kinds of networks. There's tunnels everywhere.
And mumbling up.
Well, we do we? Welcome to the real world, wakey wakey.
We've been studying.
So, any more questions?
So I'm just kind of baffled and blown away by just the things you said in the last few minutes. For example, the Antarctic.
That's a fact, by the way.
I'm willing to believe you very easily because I just had a lucid dream like weeks ago where I was with this race of giants like Nephilim. And
It wasn't about that. It was about the fact that they have a weather underground.
Right.
It's that big and under.
It was the experience of
weather.
the dream. I feel like I've been to the place you're describing.
Yeah.
And beyond that, what you just described about Mars, when we were doing the exercise, the visualization exercise, when I went through the mist, it was almost like this orb of mist, but at the center of what I thought was the sun was, and I was just gravitating towards the southern pole of this planetary body, and I remember getting to the southern pole and looking up, and it was not only hollow, but on the inside were all these almost silver blue screens, like almost nuclear cells, fusion cells going on. So, and it was distinctly the southern pole of what I thought was the sun. You know, because we were ascending towards the light in the sun. So it's funny that you know you just described almost my.
All these planets you can use Savio. Arthur C. Clarke. 2010.
Well, any sufficiently advanced.
Europa. Oh, Europa.
All worlds are yours except Europa.
Europa. Yeah. What do you think? Some of these science fiction writers, like Richard Forward and Greg Bear, are visionaries. They take scenarios of the possibilities and then try to give you a sense of what it's about. Richard Forward wrote one once called Neutron Star, about a life form on a neutron star that achieves consciousness as a crystal and can't do certain kinds of movement because of the intense gravitation, has only certain ways it can move, and then observes a spaceship to come in and observe them, man, and then evolves to the next level and saves Earth. That's a very good Earth, but because of two mini black holes in the sun that are about to blow it up. And that's called Neutron Star. Check that book out. There's a lot of good books out. I like Space Out There. That's a good science fiction.
Star Wars.
What's about?
Star Wars.
Good space opera. I love good space opera. You know, I want to swing on a vine across with ray guns shooting at me. And
That's not what I meant.
I know you did.
There's more than one author.
I know, I'm just messing with you.
Sure, I know you are. And then tell them about John C. Lilly and how you translated the dolphin language.
Well, that's where I became first aware of the fact that there are 4 mammals on this earth more evolved technically than man. Carl Sagan used me as a physicist because I have a photographic memory for languages. And they brought me into Lilly's labs to monitor and try to see if I could somehow, information-wise, determine if the dolphin had a real language or not. You know, the clicks and whistles and the whirls that they do. And I mapped it digitally. Back then, we didn't have digits. You know, this is in the 70s, early 70s. And so I recorded it and then started to gate it into sections. And I started noticing cadence patterns and was able to identify the dolphin language as a form of Clifford algebra. It is, they have a redundancy coefficient, that's Avram Moll's aesthetic perception and information theory. They have a redundancy coefficient that is 10 times more efficient than Hebrew. I speak Old Hebrew. I watched the dolphin, and I was in awe that they had this language that was way more evolved than man. And so I stepped back, and I thought, it took me only 10 days. I have spent weeks at Dolphins Plus in Key Largo, working with rehab on dolphin. Once I realized I had an entity that was smarter, I wanted to do some studies on them. And I got in the tank with several dolphins, and I felt like I was in the presence, and I'm a pretty solid man, and I felt I was in the presence of real aliens. The eye, and the way we talk about darshan, and we look at each other, and you get a sense of something. You know, the dolphin are way more evolved in the sonar part. They're doing on the internet, you can check this out. They blow these little tiny sonar bubbles, and they create circles, and then they play with them, and they do things with them, which, by the way, is a mathematical exercise if you actually study what they're actually really doing, from this to that. If you group the thing into information theory, all of a sudden, that little play that, oh, isn't that charming? Look at him play with that circle. He's not playing with a circle, he's talking to you, trying to communicate to us, using, you know, things we can say, because we don't hear. And MIT myelin, just now started producing sonoluminescence. Guess what? It's a form of cold fusion. The dolphin's arc form is a form of cold fusion. Now, who's higher on the food chain? You know, I've watched pods of orca try to do pods of dolphin. That's a real interesting one. Yeah, there's all over on the internet. I'll get you. Don't worry. And I'm now understanding food chain. We don't have a clue. We don't have a clue. And it is egotistical of us to think that this whole thing's about us. What technology as we experience it is because we have a thumb and we have fire. And when you take those two things away, what would technology be? And that's when I saw that the dolphin are more evolved technically than we are. They're doing things with sonar we don't even understand yet. That's why the Navy's out there looking at it.
Well, wouldn't Fukushima really mess up the dolphins?
Huh. It's gonna mess up everything. That's why we have, like termites will mess up everything too, so there it is. You know, the ants. If you did an inventory on your piece of property, and you counted how many humans lived on your piece of property, how many ants are on your property? Care to comment? Million? Million? Hive consciousness? The Borg! No, the point is, I'm trying to say something. When I first met Lloyd Pye, when I first met Lloyd Pye, I got to hold and look at the Star Child, you know, the skull that they found in the 1800s. And if you look at the skull, there's some interesting elements about it that they don't make a lot of note about, and that's why I wanted to take that skull and do what I did for Navy. I wanted to look for DNA in the stitches of the bone as a dendrite, because the Hopi talked about the Ant-Men, which was an underground hab of men, they were little ant-men, that the way they talked to each other was they touched their foreheads together and had complete download to each other by touching no language. They were called the Ant-Men. They're in the history of the Hopi, and I wanted to see if these stitches, because you look at the Star Child structure of the bone, it looks like there's dendrites going right straight to the surface, and the whole thing's full of dendrites, you know, right to the surface, where you could touch the two and have a hive consciousness. And my guess is, it was an experiment that didn't work, and then down and next. Because whereas Pye's argument on being, you know, manufactured is that every place where there's a missing link, there is a similar missing link in the grains and other forage that missing link was eating. When there was a mandible change in the missing link, it was no longer a Cro-Magnon, it was a blah, blah, blah. The grain changed from this to that so that it can eat it. How does that work? I mean, okay, I don't know. What I do know is that is an evolution, and it's certainly not creationism in 7 days. So, you know, I have to say, I don't know. I'm a scientist. The only thing the only thing I can do to you is promise you that when I say something, it will absolutely adhere to the rules of engagement of being a physicist. I can't ignore that part of myself. I have to, you know, have that be part of the meat of my explanation. And if I can't do that, I simply say I don't have a clue. And when I didn't have a clue, that's what I did next. Is I went into Hermetic Kabbalism. I, you know, looked into the old Bibles, not the Bibles, but the old ones. That's where I learned my Hebrew and Greek and Old Hebrew. And I didn't find answers there either. But what I did find is that in the old Bibles they talk about a hierarchy of gods. I'd like to know what the Ein Sof, and the Ein Sof Ur are in the Veils of Isis. You know, you got Kether, you know, that's God, our God, you know, the God of everything, right? And then they have the Veils of Isis. What does that mean? I don't know. And I can tell you there are anomalies on this planet that we can speculate all day long in terms of advanced technologies or different technologies where man went off in a different direction and then crashed and burned, you know, and then re-evolved or whatever. But candidly, I don't think it, my sense of what I have seen, there is no question there's something else going on here. Aliens, well, that's a good 4th grade explanation. And guess what? There's graduate school and postdoctoral eventually. So we're all in only 4th grade, and to conceptualize, well, is it the Anunnaki? That's 4th grade, like talking about Mr. Brown, and is he, gay or what? Who knows? I mean, it's like a 4th grader trying to discuss, and we're all 4th grade, me too. I just run faster across the playground this grade. But I'm not any length, girth, and width in terms of what the capabilities of a man, and what I can do, you can do. And it's time, the rapture never came and got me. I was waiting for it.
You're left behind.
Yeah, I know, exactly, yeah. But I figured God said he'll help those that help themselves. It's time to take personal responsibility for your own evolution. Nobody else is going to do that for you. And so, and you don't have to rush at it. I'll give you a simple story. I was embarrassed when I finally realized the importance of meditation. I was old and grumpy and I didn't want to meditate. And how am I going to get the brain of someone that's been meditating for 30 years? Well, I'm a physicist. So I have to figure out a toy to get there quicker. I did that.
Did you?
Yeah, in 4 years, use brain drivers.
What's that?
In
What's the brain drive?
frequency following function. In 4 years, I have the brain of someone that meditates for 30 years.
Do you sell them?
I know.
Do I sell them? No. But I'll talk about them. And I can recommend the ones I use over the ones you don't. If you're going trolling, you got to be very careful because, the center point is a bunch, that's where they troll, Scientology trolls for fish like you. And, there's creepy crawlies out there in the world. And so you got to go in with your armor. A good book to start with is Dion Fortune, Psychic Self-Defense. Start there. That works. No, it does. It gets you doing it. The white light around your body, that's okay. Garlic. I use garlic. If someone was in my house that I didn't like and they left a bunch of bad vibes, like we had an argument, I get a nice piece of garlic, and I'll walk around every corner in every room and out the door again, and that's that. I light a candle, whatever. It's all in your mind's eye. It's not what you do, but how you do it. That's where the center of getting closer to the Lord comes from. It's not your belief system, it's how you go about your personal beliefs. Same thing with consciousness. Good luck. Well, I'm not going to be able to do it for you. Yes, ma'am.
Besides the orca and the dolphin, what are the other 2 forms that are more intelligent?
Pilot whale and manatee. They all 4 have bigger brain cases than man.
Pilot whale and what?
Manatee.
Manatee.
Yeah. In my opinion, I'm wrong all the time, so don't worry about it. I am. It could be, the huma huma nuka nuka apawaha, and there's 5 consciousness. I don't know. It could be anything. I basically approached it from a cybernetic point of view for crunching power and the size of the computer, the motherboard. That's how I approached it. That's not a valid way to do it because now we have mycorrhizae in the soil, which is a quantum computation algorithm. So there it is. And now we're learning other kinds of algorithms. I wouldn't be surprised if this isn't conscious. Well, the whole thing is about life. What is life? Well, it starts with water. It's about water. You know what makes water so special? In the periodic chart of all the different elements, you got hydrogen, helium, blah, 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 and oxygen. And water is the first molecule that has a dipole moment. And that suggests to me a dimensional gate, going from one thing to another, and that's what Gary Reams, Willard, and all the rest of them, not the rat Willard, but the Willard water, and then the structured water. And there's, right now, we have a lot of different structured waters we're now identifying with deuterium, tritium, and H709, free radical ion, blah, 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 blah. oxygenated, hydrogen peroxide, or they say through oxygen molecule flying around in there, oxidizing things, doing, good things, bad things, who knows what things. Sun Bear says to walk in balance. Your belief systems allow that universe to happen, and they also limit it. And you choose your belief systems predicated on what you want to do. You use them as a tool. And like I said, I have a pair of bell-bottom pants I'm never going to throw away. I'll never fit in them again. Yes, ma'am.
Who do you think built and is occupying the base in Alaska?
Who's that?
Who's occupying the base in Alaska?
Which base? Harp? What do you mean?
No, the cave. Cave.
You mean in Antarctica?
In
That's what
Antarctica.
I meant. I
You
meant-
mean it's the Nazis in the 1,000-Year War? Yeah. Roger, yeah, right. I don't know. What I saw were ruins. I saw, just like in Alien vs. Predator, I saw old abandoned things that had been there, they're whaling in the 20s. I saw them in the caves, so the caves have been known about for centuries, not 1 century, centuries.
What things did you see that were abandoned?
Artifacts inside the caves. Nobody's living there. I didn't see tribes and, Nazis running around with their little...
Were they buildings? What were they?
Yeah, people had been there.
There were buildings inside.
Yeah, abandoned buildings, they were 70 years old, 80 years old. In other words, they knew about these underground cave paths before I was even born.
Do you think that's where Bird visited?
I don't know. But, what do you think? See, that part of it, where you make judgment, what I will try to do is I'll tell you what I think, but it's not a fact. Because I don't think aliens are from stars. I don't think stars are real in the sense that we think of it, because space-time isn't what we think of it. And really, in fact, something else is going on, and that's what Carl Sagan tried to imply when he used a diamond body to slide in dimensional space to talk to aliens. And this is how we've always done it, and Small Steps Alley. Carl Sagan was pretty bright. In my opinion, he chose me to. I have met some very intelligent people. I know that I'm different. I don't see myself as being very intelligent. What I am is an encyclopedia.
Did you ever meet Arthur C. Clarke?
No, I haven't met him. I've read all his foundation. Yeah, listen, an iRobot. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you were talking about the dolphins and the intelligence. Do you imagine that they might have the intelligence to be smart enough to stop us from destroying the planet that they share?
How do I answer that?
Okay.
Let's try it this way.
Do you imagine that might be going on in
The
your
only
life?
law in physics that's lasted longer than 20 years is Maxwell's right rule of thumb in hitchhiking out of here to the galaxy. The right-hand rule of thumb is the only law in physics that's lasted longer than 20 years, including quantum mechanics. Nothing is real except your imagination. And that is where you start with it, and good luck with your ESP part of it. Because if you can do that, you have taken a significant step toward enlightenment.